And a lot of different things have happened last night. How many were at the concert last night? Some of you? Good. And we had a great bonfire after that as well. And there was a ladies' tea this afternoon and golf, and many of us enjoyed a delicious supper. So we've had a really good weekend already. We had a really good afternoon of golf, even though it was interrupted by a little bit of rain. And I always think if you golf the way I golf, it's a really good way of sort of testing your Christian values. Perseverance, determination, long suffering, lots of suffering. But Gerald Cron and Pastor Randy and Peter Duick were very kind teammates this afternoon, so I really enjoyed that. I hope some of you, maybe all of you, have come to share a little bit this evening. We do have some things on the program. We've got a worship team, we've got Bethel Quartet. Ray Wheeler's going to speak, but we also are hoping that some of you will come up and just share some of your memories of Bethel, and so there will definitely be time for that as well. My name is Gerald Leckerman. This is the only church that I've ever been a part of. I was a toddler when the church was started in the mid-'60s. My parents are Abe and Margaret Leckerman. Dad has passed on, but he was involved in building the original building back in the mid-'60s. Those of you who want to play the Mennonite game, I would be the youngest brother to Richard and Ruth, Ron, Albert, Bob, and Ray. Unfortunately, my brother Bob passed away earlier this year, so he can't be with us. Speaking of my brothers, my loving brothers always, if you don't remember me, they insisted that I was a grumpy little redhead when I was a toddler. So some of you may remember me that way, I'm not sure. So let's get started with, I'll ask the worship team to come up and to sing with us a bit. Patty?
We'll join you all to stand, or ask you to join us. Stand, and let's praise the Lord together.
We are a moment, you are forever, Lord of the
seat and we'll continue.
Son of God, shaper of the stars, you alone, the dweller of my heart, mighty King, how beautiful you are, how beautiful. Son of God, the Father's gift to us, you alone were broken on the altar of love. Precious Lamb, our freedom's in your blood. It's in your blood, Jesus. Oh, Holy One, I sing to you. Forgive us, Savior. I'm overcome with your great love for me. Son of God, strength beyond compare, you alone the darkness cannot bear. Lord of love, your kindness draws me near. It draws me near. Son of God, brought the sea of old, you alone, Redeemer of my soul. Come again and lead your people home. Come lead us home, Jesus. Oh, Holy One, I sing to you. Forgive us, Savior. I'm overcome with your great love for me. You are worthy. You are worthy. You are worthy of all my praise. You are beautiful. You are beautiful. I will lift up my hands and sing. Jesus, oh Holy One, I sing to you. Forgive us, Savior. I'm overcome with your great love for me.
I think we should stand for this one.
You can hardly sing this sitting down.
Sitting.
Lord my God, when I in awesome
You may be seated.
Thanks so much for leading us. That was great. As I already mentioned, I was a toddler when the church opened, way back when, well, 50 years ago. And so some of my very first memories, period, were of church. I was fortunate enough to have parents that took me to church on a regular basis. And I clearly remember Pastor Otto Hem, our very first pastor. And I don't remember a lot of his sermons, but I do remember as a toddler, I thought his prayers were a little on the long side sometimes because we had to stand. But that was just from a toddler's perspective. I'm sure they weren't too long at all. Also, one of my favorite memories would be hearing solos by Mrs. Marie Wheeler, who served here for many, many years. They lived across the line and came to church at Bethel. One more thing I want to just mention. I think, now correct me, some of you older people would maybe correct me later when you come up here, but I believe one of our first renos on the original building included a small staircase on the back stage going down to the kitchen, I believe. And I remember as a small kid, that was just the coolest thing. It was a sort of a secret staircase. Russ, I bet you remember that. Us kids would sometimes play back there. I just bumped into my cousin, Russ Jansen there. We go back here many years as well. I think we should stick with the theme. If you saw the video going before of our 25th celebration, one of the people featured was Frank Entz. I'm guessing he was sharing, and he has again said he'd be willing to share this evening. So I'll ask Frank to come up now, and Neil Funk will share after him. Come on up, Frank.
Well, good evening. I didn't think you'd call me up this early. I almost ran out of breath singing How Great Thou Art. But for your benefit, I didn't come up here to sing, or else you people would all leave here and say, we've never heard a song like that before. But I can speak with Mr. Lepton here and saying that this was his first church. Mine was in Winkler, the Bergthaler church. And I remember my dad coming home one day. You all know where my dad is. He went to be with the Lord. But in those days, there was a group of people out of the Bergthaler church that had a vision for putting up a church in southern Manitoba. And that led to a founding committee, what they called it, which was elected by the Bergthalers, namely Ed Elias, Frank Suderman Sr. We call him Frank Suderman Sr. because later on his son Frank joined our church here, his son Pete Suderman, Abe Suderman, and the Reverend Jake Stobie, a pastor in the Bergthaler church. In fact, Jake Stobie was the gentleman that led the baptism class the year before Bethel started here, and I was a member of that class. There was a second meeting called by the founding committee for a show of interest, of which 22 people were present. That meeting in itself generated enough interest that the Winkler Bergthaler Council elected Ed Elias, Jake Johnson, Frank Wheeler, Pete Suderman, and Bill Wheeler being out of Walhalla at that time, as the finance committee for the new church if it would get started. Then there was another meeting on April 27th at the Country Lumber Yard, which was 2 miles south of here on the east side, which is now the Suderman farm. Now, to remember Country Lumber, which is owned by Ed and his wife Margaret, you have to have a little bit of gray hair or no hair. The people there, they proceeded with the thought of a new church, and a meeting was held, and they had pledges with an amount of $22,000 to $23,000 for the construction of a new church. And there was a gentleman in the area, not being a member of Bethel at that time, he said he would pledge $1,000 if the church would be a go-ahead. Now that might not be a whole bunch of money in today's, but that was a big one at that time, considering that you could buy a new Chevy half-ton in Rhineland for $2,500. The sod turning ceremony was held on July 23rd, with Country Lumber they would supply all the building materials, and Edelweiss also very active in construction. He designated some of his help to construct the church. Everything was pretty much built on site. Gerald's dad, he built all the windows of the old sanctuary, if you remember them being there, and they were all erected. The rafters were built on the floor and lifted up later. Most everything was built on site. I must say I got my first crash course in construction by setting up the basement walls under the foreman of Peter Paul's, living down in Oosterwijk. The basement walls consumed 36 yards of concrete, roughly, and it took us the better part of all afternoon to pour that. There was no pumps heard of at that time. Incidentally, Edelweiss is also the gentleman that introduced ready-mix into southern Manitoba. And with all the construction, I'd have to say within 6.5 months of sod turning, we had the dedication service. The first membership was 48 original members. First baptism class was 10, and there was a transfer of 15. Mary and myself, my wife, we have always attended this church. Bethel had its clouds and sunny days, but the good Lord has always put something in her mind which we call the memory bank. My thinking is, if we deal with the thoughts more on the positive than the negative, better progress will be made. Say what you will, but more often than not, we call it the good old days. I, for myself, I enjoy my health. I enjoy a good day's work. So I'd have to say I'm just living in my good old days. Okay.
6 months is 1% of 50 years. I'm the 1% pastor. And yet I think I'm the oldest still living pastor. And because that's so, I was a little disappointed that I wasn't given a special name tag. Like honorary pastor, maybe? Or pastor emeritus, maybe? See, name tags and name cards are very important. Farmer was standing in his yard one day, an unmarked car drove up, and an official-looking man came out to talk to the farmer and said, "I'm here to inspect your farm." The farmer says, "I can't let you do that. You drive an unmarked car. You don't have any identification." "Oh, yes, I do." He pulled out his plastic-coated card with his name and title. "I'm the inspector for the government, and I can inspect your farm." The farmer said, "Well, I guess you can inspect my farm, but I think there are some places you shouldn't go." Oh, again, he pulled out his card and said, "This card entitles me to go wherever I want." "Well, okay," the farmer said, "you go inspect, but I think there's still some places you shouldn't go." The farmer stood in the yard for a bit, and all at once there was a commotion out behind the barn, and he saw the inspector running across the corral with the bull at his heels, and he was crying out, "Call him off! Call him off!" And the farmer said, "Show him your card! Show him your card!" Names are very important. I'm Neil Funk, one-time pastor of this church. And I want to give just a brief impression of this church as I saw it then and as I see it now. I want to speak first of all about the wisdom of the leadership. I'd been called about September or October whether I would come and do the Advent services in 2001. So I agreed to do that. And about the third Sunday, the leadership team, the ministerial, met with us and said, would you be willing to come and be our interim pastor? And so we agreed to come. And I have been often reflected on that. What a great idea the leadership team had. It gave the congregation an idea to be exposed to us, and we were exposed to the congregation. And you got to know us and so on, and the transition was super smooth because of the wisdom of the leadership team in which they had handled this change and called leadership. I want to note also the welcome we received. We were always made very welcome. Bill Clausen and I would get here to see who could open the church doors. Early on Sunday morning, he would be making preparations for his Sunday school classes, and I would be welcoming all the people, and they were always seemed to be happy to see me. But the real welcome began earlier than that. A few days after I got here, the 1st of February, a delegation or somebody came to see me and asked me whether I would be the chairman for the Valentine's social and also give a little talk there. Well, I was quite nonchalant about it. I'd often done these things. Shouldn't be too difficult. And then I saw the preparations that was going into this. A Valentine's party put on by Grace Taves is second only to the Ed Sullivan Show. And when I saw these preparations, and I'm sure the decorations were sent straight from California, I thought I'd better be at my best. And I'm so glad I didn't get any hate letters after that. So I must have done all right. In conclusion, we appreciate the warm relationship which has continued over these years. Whenever we meet people from Bethel, in the various places, they always greet us warmly. Often they stop by our tables at the restaurants and say hello to us. We certainly have appreciated your warm friendship, and we congratulate you on this occasion, and we wish you God's blessing in the future. I was your 1% pastor, but you certainly weren't my 1% congregation.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Frank, for sharing as well. Just on a note, if some of you would prefer to say a few words from your seat, that's possible as well. You can just let Jake know, one of our great sound guys back there, and he'll make sure you get a mic to use from where you sit as well, if rather than coming up here. Mr. Frank Wheeler, is Mr. Wheeler here? He was a longtime sound guy, and one of my earliest memories as a little toddler again, or a bit older than that, I guess, the Christmas concert doing verses, and Mr. Wheeler would hold this mic, he'd come along the aisle or the front of the church with his mic, and I remember clearly, it had a dent in it, and I was intrigued with the dent, so I would stare at the mic, and I remember so clearly Mr. Wheeler, you telling me, don't look at the mic, look at the audience when you're saying your verse. And it's just one of my memories. Also, one of my earliest memories, I'm not sure what year this would have been, Gus can expand on that at some point, but I'm not sure if he was already hired here or whether, something tells me he was maybe just candidating at the church, I'm not sure, but Gus Conkle was here, and there was some event going on in the evening, and some of us younger guys, and Russ, you were probably there too, we were outside, I don't know, messing around rather than being inside with people were having coffee or whatever. And Gus took the time, he came out and befriended us. And, asked who we were and what we were up to and this and that. And he played with us and he joked around and one of his, I think he even did some racing with us or whatever. We were running around, being silly as little kids. So I'll never forget that, Gus, the way you just connected with even us younger ones back during that time. Speaking of being younger and fooling around, I remember just last Sunday, I went back. I'm involved in the sound here at Bethel, and I walked in the back here, and there I heard little voices, and there were some little kids back there in the dark, and it said, okay, guys, you better not be here or whatever. And then flashback. I clearly remember being in the, after, again, some evening event. Us young guys were in the sanctuary. Everyone else was downstairs. We were in the sanctuary in the total darkness, sliding under the pews like this along the slippery floor. And I'm pretty sure it was Mr. Buhler that caught us, right? And we were busted. Yeah, for sure. Many good memories. Sunday school and Boys Brigade, I think it was called at the time. Just so many places where adults during that time took time to just mentor us younger ones. And of course that still goes on, and we hope we're paying it forward now. But very, very important. Especially during I would say during my teenage years, I have to say a big thank you to Leonard Buhler. I'm sure Leonard's not here, but a huge thank you to him. And I have to mention Bob as well, Bob Elias. Leonard Buhler and Bob Elias took me personally under their wing. And of course, Bob isn't with us anymore, but boy, did he leave a lasting impression. Is there anyone else that would like to come and share? We'd love to hear some more memories of stories. This is your chance. Not everyone at once, please. Dorothy, before you come up, come on up. Another memory has nothing to do with Bethel, but Dorothy had the tough job of teaching me grade 5 way back in Waycam School, not so far from here. So welcome here.
Thank you.
Don't tell any stories.
Well, you see, in those days, teachers were very, very young. Yeah. So my name is Dorothy Elias Anra Dirksen, and in the paper you might have seen Brown as well, so I come with many names. But my memories too are from way back. When we were young, the families living around us took their children to Haskett School for Sunday school. And so Isaac Buhler would have to drive sometimes, and he had a little VW. And there were 9 children, plus Mr. Buhler, in that car that went to the Sunday school. We were 3 layers deep. And so then, after a while, there was talk about starting a church here. And of course, Isaac Buhler and my dad were very interested and started, and also were part of the meetings. And so that was really great. And some of the other things that I remember, well, first of all, the verse that was so important during that time was, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. And then after a while, the church grew quite quickly. And I was 13 years old, I think, when we first started. And I remember being invited to be part of the choir. Oh, I felt so grown up, and I loved sitting next to Marie Wheeler. She could sing well, and I could sing along with her. And also I want to thank all the choir directors, because they had all kinds of music that we learned, the cantatas and just different hymns that we learned, and I appreciate that. And then also there were the Sunday school. Thank you for the teachers. Jake Jansen was my teacher for many years, and so I appreciate him for that as well. And then also the youth groups. We had, sometimes our youth group was small, like maybe 10, 11 people came out. Next time it was 60. at different times of the different years, it grew and waned, just like it usually does. And I just remember the retreats. I remember the Bible studies. I remember all the skits we did. And Bill and Dick and Moose probably remember all of those as well. And even Gus probably remembers some of those skits. So, and also then Pioneer Clubs. I was involved with Pioneer Clubs as well. And teaching Sunday school. There was always an opportunity to teach Sunday school in BBS. And always discipled. And that prepared me for the opportunities of ministry in the future and also the challenges that I had in the future. And so I'm very thankful for all the opportunities to learn, to participate here at Bethel. I am thankful for the support our family got when Bob died, and also the support that Jennifer and I got when Al passed away. And yes, I'm also thankful for all the years that I attended here and how God prepared me during that time. And may God continue to bless this church as you continue to serve others.
Thanks, Dorothy, for all of that. Is there anyone else that would like to come and share at this time?
I know when we get up to sing, the quartet won't let me talk, so. 1965, 2 years after Marge and I moved to Blumenfeld from Rose Farm. And we taught at Blumenfeld for 4 years, and the church started in 1965, and boy, oh boy, we were pleased. We were not comfortable going to the Winkler Bergthaler church because it was all in German. So guess what? When we came over here, everything was in German. But it didn't last very long. You know, we were, I think, a little more progressive in the concept of, you know, getting Christianity to our children so that they could understand it. And so we had this struggle with singing songs in the morning. Mr. Suderman, Mr. Frank Suderman wanted German songs. He didn't understand English too well, you know, so, well, we gradually switched over. But he was a man that I respected greatly. He didn't stick to his guns. We've got to sing German. We've got to speak German. No, he did not. He simply said, "Singt mich gefallen, ein Liedchen late, jeder Sinnach." Right? Sing, do me a favor and sing one German song every Sunday morning. And he was happy. He said, "I have learned everything I'm going to learn, but the kids haven't." But I got to tell you something about Gus Conkle. Is Gus here? I'm not telling anything else. He knows this is true. We lived on Mountain Avenue in a small house. And I don't know, Gus was so closely affiliated with Gary Spence and Bob Elias. And I don't know who else was there, but they came and picked up some equipment to go camping or something. I think they picked up a tent we had, wasn't it, Marge? Correct me if I'm wrong. And they didn't come at 6 o'clock in the evening or at noon or something. They came at midnight. Now, if you know Gus, these guys were having fun. And if you know Gus, if he starts laughing, all of Winkler knows it. And Marge said, "What will neighbors think? What will the neighbors think?" Well, it didn't matter too much, but it was... We were afraid that they would think we had some, well, whatever. I won't say it out loud. But you know, I learned so much over here. As a school teacher, you get involved in stuff that they think school teachers should be able to do. And I was one of the choir directors. I enjoyed it immensely, but boy, did I learn something. It was busy. And we had the old mimeograph, you know, where you had to take this sheet, these 8.5 by 14, and you had to draw on it with a little round, it wasn't a pen, it was a sharp little ball. And I still have some of that music that I wrote out. I printed I drew the lines with the ruler. I put in all the notes, and I put in all the words, and we sang from it. Wow. That took me all night to do one song, and sometimes 2 nights. Anyway, it was beautiful. Pete Suderman taught me something. When we left Lumenfeld to go to Snowflake, somebody said at the table when we had a church council meeting, well, what are we going to do without you? Pete stuck his finger in a glass of water, pulled it out, and he said, we'll manage just fine. I learned something.
Thanks, John. Anyone else have something to share at this time?
I will not assume that everyone knows who I am. I am Tony Penner. I was here as youth pastor from 1995 to 2000. And my heart has never left Bethel Church in some regards. Right now, I am pastoring for the last 8 years at a church in Grunthal, Graceway Church, part of the Evangelical Free Church. And the beginnings of my ministry as a pastor began right here. It began right here, and my fondest, the fondest word I can use to describe my time was graciousness. I came straight out of college, out of Providence, green as ever could be, and I remember being interviewed, and I look back on it now and I thought they were either crazy or gracious, and I will go with gracious. And we tried many things. I don't think we had a very good playbook because there was no rules, and we broke all of the ones we didn't know we were breaking. I'm sure Gerald has some of his gray hairs from leading education committee and having to guide and direct us on a path that was sane at most times. But I look at some of the pictures, and I look at some of the faces that I see, and it brings a tear to my eye. God has been good to us, good to you, and He's been good to me. And I would say that I express great gratitude and great thanks for a church that took a young man who was naive and quite accurately foolish and gave him a chance. This is my anniversary year as well. 20 years I've been in pastoral ministry as of 1995, 2015. And it began here. And part of my heart never leaves here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Lottie Clausen, my husband Dick. We come as a package apparently. And as we were driving out yesterday from Steinbach, just a flood of memories came to me, and they were all such good memories. 35 years ago, I came to this church as a newlywed, and I was welcomed, and this was such a place of love. And one of the things I remember is the hugs, getting the hugs, especially from Bill Wheeler and Frank Wheeler. And I even got one today from Frank, and it was so good. I got my Frank hug. This is a place where our children were dedicated. This is a place where there was always skits, and there was always drama, and there was always fun. And I remember the ladies group, we called them homemakers, I think, and the great times of Bible studies we had. We had the small groups, the care groups, and then the larger care groups, and the good Bible studies that Don Hebert led. I can never forget those. And the Sunday school kids, the Sunday school classes, and the youth. Youth always sat right up front. I said, that says something about a church, you know. It was wonderful. And at one time, they asked us to be youth leaders. We were clueless. We didn't even know. We didn't have a clue how to be youth leaders. All we knew is we loved the kids, and we wanted them to learn to love God. And somehow, somewhere along the line, I think they learned to love each other a lot. Because I think there's at least 5 or 6 couples that out of that group that got married to each other. And Gerald and Wendy, I think, I know you're one of them. And this church also, I think you've gone through some rough patches, and it's just so encouraging to see, coming back after many years now, and to see this large church, to see so many young people and young families, and that's a really big encouragement to us as well.
My notes aren't quite as long. Some of the things that I remember was I joined when I was in youth. And the one thing I remember is driving my motorcycle past the highway here. And depending what time of morning, usually shortly after 8, Gus Conkle would be standing in the window and waving. And I always thought that meant stop and come in. So that's what I did. And I was always welcomed. Until this one day I asked him, because I never seemed to know why I had come. So this one day I asked him why he had waved at me to come in. He says, oh no, I was just praying. He says, I pray with my hands. And that's one thing that I've learned from him is you got to talk with your hands and make sure that. But I always appreciated Gus very much. The other thing that I appreciated here was as a young guy, and again, I probably was still in youth when I was elected to be in the, I'm not sure what they called it at that time, but it was the committee that looked after the building. And I had the privilege of working with people like Frank W.L. Entz, John Taves, and Mr. Entz, who just was up here, Frank. And they took me at that young age and took me under their wing and showed me and helped me. And I look back now at where I am and the young people in our church, and I just say I need to change some thinking here. But thank you for doing that. Thank you for carrying on. God has blessed, and we pray He will continue to bless you abundantly.
Thanks, Dick and Lottie. Thanks, Tony. Tony, during those years, we never, as leadership, we never doubted your passion for the kids, and it was all good, believe me, all good. Even though there were bumps in the road sometimes, as we always have. You know, we hear a lot about the youth, and I cannot, Wendy and I often talk about, of course, this is where I met her, so that's kind of special as well, but the people that helped us through those years, right? The turmoil of being a young adult, Don and Linda, Dick and Lottie in particular, man, the 4 of you and how you guided us through some tough times. And just during that time we're searching and we need grounding, and you did that for us. Wendy has this great story. When they first attended this church, it was she was a youth age already when they first came to Bethel from a fairly conservative church, and moving to a church that was a little more progressive, and she joined youth right away. And at the time, Gus was quite involved in youth as well. And we had an evening, a youth evening at Frank Suderman's, and that was not unusual. They had a nice home. We were in the basement, and as sometimes happened when Gus was involved, things got just slightly out of hand. There was some food fight things happening at snack time, and this was kind of new to Wendy, coming from the church she was from. This whole youth thing, let alone some of this, sort of having a lot of fun, And Gus got some food on his pants, and you could just tell this was just no big deal, some whipped cream. And so just right there, he just dropped his pants, down his boxers, went to the sink and washed it off, and put his pants back on. Wendy was just in stunned amazement. And I don't think it's a story that she told her mom and dad right away. So, but it was never a dull moment when Gus was around, that's for sure. This next group doesn't need a lot of introduction for anybody here, probably. They are the Bethel Quartet. And I'm sure they'll talk a little bit. I really don't know exactly how long they've been together, but it's been a long time. And we have pretty well the original group together tonight. They're going to come up and sing some songs for us, and they'll facilitate some sharing time between songs. So the time of sharing is not done. If you would like to share a little bit, please be prepared to do that between some of the songs when they invite you up to do so. Bethel Quartet, we're looking forward to you.
This has nothing to do with sharing, but I have a yellow mic. You told me the other day it was supposed to be blue.
No, you take blue.
Trade?
Yep.
Okay. What's my color? Am I yellow?
Yes.
Old people are set in their ways. And we are old.
Can you smell the mothballs?
There is not another sister, friend, or brother loves the way that Jesus can. He proved his love for me when he died on Calvary. He gave his life for fallen man. His love is the boundless love, and it reaches down and touches me. His love is an endless love that will last through all eternity.
Hey, sing with us. In all means, you got the words.
Jesus wants to love you, there is none above you. You are precious in his sight. He will never fail you when the doubts assail you. He'll be with you day and night. His love is the boundless love, and it reaches down and touches me. His love is an endless love that will last through all eternity. His love is a boundless love, and it reaches down and touches me. His love is an endless love that will last through all eternity. His love, His love, His love, His love, His love is a boundless love, is a boundless love.
Hey guys, let's decide one thing right now. I can't sing that fast, and I can't play that fast, and I can't breathe that fast. So let's slow things down, okay? We just agreed when we were practicing out there, let's not sing that one too fast. Whoa. Well, Sarah, it's not your fault. What key are we in? C. C?
See, we can't see. We have to look at it. Frank, this one's for you.
G3.
And I thank God for the lighthouse. I owe my life to Him. For Jesus is the lighthouse, and from the rocks of sin He has shone a light around me, that I could clearly see. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, where would this ship be? There's a lighthouse on the hillside that overlooks life's sea. When I'm tossed, it sends out a light that I might see, and the light that shines in darkness now will safely lead my soul. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, my ship would be no more. And I thank God for the lighthouse. I owe my life to Him. For Jesus is the lighthouse, and from the rocks of sin He has shone a light around me, that I could clearly see. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, tell me, where would this ship be? Everybody that lives about us says, tear that lighthouse down. The big ships don't sail this way anymore. There's no use of it standing around. Then my mind goes back to that stormy night, when just in time I saw the light. Yes, the light from that old lighthouse that stands up there on the hill. And I thank God for the lighthouse. I owe my life to Him. For Jesus is the lighthouse, and from the rocks of sin He has shone a light around me, that I could clearly see. If it wasn't for the lighthouse, tell me, where would this ship be? If it wasn't for the lighthouse, tell me, where would this ship be?
Now we should do a verse in the right key.
Well, that's all right. We've done that before. I'll tell you one thing we've had more of than anything else probably is fun with these guys. And Sarah had to put up with us. I feel sorry for her.
You know, we started about, what was it, 40 years ago? 45 years ago?
Yeah,
When we started.
1970.
And we sang something like, just, what was it, over 30 years, right? And actually, we've been in retirement now for 12, 13 years, or whatever it is.
15.
Or 15?
Well, semi-retired. It's
And
like, yeah, it's like my grandkid said, well, Grandpa used to be a teacher, now he's retarded. That's about the way it is with this quartet. What are we doing now? Oh, this one is a G. Oh, okay. It wasn't the other one.
Bigger than all my problems, bigger than all my fears. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my questions, bigger than anything. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all the shadows that fall across my path. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my confusion, bigger than anything. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my problems, bigger than all my fears. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my questions, bigger than anything. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all the giants of fear and unbelief. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my hang-ups, bigger than anything. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my problems, bigger than all my fears. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. Bigger than all my questions, bigger than anything. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see. God is bigger than any mountain that I can or cannot see.
The one thing that we were always accused of, don't you guys ever smile when you sing? Remember that spiel up there, that spoof that my son and Jake's son and Abe's son and Gary's son did on the Bethel Quartet? Well, it was far closer to the truth than we wanted to admit.
Hey, I have to tell you something, you know, Ron, his son, he instigated that thing that you saw there. And he sang with us at one time for a little while too. And I don't know where we were, he introduced us. And I was wearing bifocals. And he introduced me and said that I was the only quartet member that had dual headlights.
This song that we're going to sing for you, if I'm right, this is the first song we ever did.
changed when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I am one of his own. I met the Master. Now I belong to him. Like a blind man who walks in the darkness, I was lost and I searched for the light. Then I met the Master. Now I walk no more in the night. For all things were changed when he found me. A new day broke through all around me. For I met the Master. Now I am one of his own. I met the Master. Now I belong to him. I met the Master. Now I belong to him.
Anybody have a story to share?
Hi there, my name is Donald Hebert, and I have one favorite memory I'd like to share with you. I was going to share it just before these guys came up, and I'm still going to share it. One of my favorite memories about Bethel Church is the Bethel Quartet. And I've shared this with all of these guys at one time or another, but I want to tell maybe two stories about my experience with them. Now, they said they retired, I don't know how many years ago, I don't know what year it was, but they were doing a retirement kind of a performance or concert. I think it was a Sunday morning, am I correct in that? This was going to be their final time to sing. And I enjoyed them so much, and I knew that they would never do this again, at least that's what they said. And so I was weeping the entire service. I just couldn't really enjoy it. I was so sad. Now, I have known that they came out of retirement a few times since to do with the odd, time of singing. And I'd just like to share with them again. Back in 1975 or so, I came to the Lord. Shortly afterwards, I met Linda. I think that was in 77. And so these guys had had lots of practice by that time, and they had put out records. And I remember driving to and from Winnipeg, where Linda was, when I was courting. And on my way there and on my way back, I would worship. I would have taken my hands off the wheel and prayed like this to her, I enjoyed it so much because the Bethel Quartet and I were worshiping the Lord, and I just loved it, So I want to thank all of you guys for the ministry that you had. I know you were on the road a lot. You had a van, I think, and you had a great time, I think, serving in many, many churches all over the place. And I'm thankful that you served the Lord all those times. And God bless you, each one of you. I'm thankful for each one of these men and the accompanists that I've worked with, and I thank you too for your service in many years. Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Very kind words. Hey, why don't you stand and sing this next one with us? I will serve thee, okay? Need a break.
Ruined lives are why you died on Calvary. Your cross was what I longed for. You have given life to me.
One more time, okay?
I will serve thee because I love thee. You have given life to me. I was nothing before you found me. You have given life to me. Heartaches, broken pieces, ruined lives are why you died on Calvary. Your touch was what I longed for. You have given life to me. You have given life to me.
Thank you. You may be seated. Got a phone call today, asked to sing a song by special request. Bob Elias, his name was mentioned a few times. He died in an ultralight aircraft accident, 81 or 82 in there. 82, okay. And his favorite song had been a Johnny Cash song, Wings in the Morning. So we just brought it out. Yeah, we sang it at his funeral.
Wings in the morning and license to fly straight to the portals of nevermore die. Never more pain in their old aching bones. Wings in the morning to carry us home. Grandfather lived by the book all his life. A rich bottom land with 12 kids and a wife. He never saw TV or rode a jet plane, but he knew that heaven was holding his claim. The salt of the earth, yet with faith in the Lord, they all got together in that one accord. And what could be greater than God's guarantee that we can have heaven for eternity? Wings in the morning and license to fly straight to the portals of nevermore die. Never more pain in them old aching bones. Wings in the morning to carry us home. Rocks in the road and we stumble and fall. Lights getting low so we don't see it all. But I promise you on that getting up day, wings in the morning and we'll fly away. Wings in the morning and license to fly straight to the portals of nevermore die. Never more pain in them old aching bones. Wings in the morning to carry us home. Wings in the morning and license to fly straight to the portals of nevermore die. Never more pain in
I was just going to say that I'm one of the older people over here in this church already. I can't believe that. But as a matter of fact, there are only a few of us that in my age group. There are a few that are a little older than I am, but not very many of us that are left. I was teaching Sunday school when, and you heard a lot about Gus, and I was teaching Sunday school when a strange young man walked into my class downstairs right next to the furnace room. And lo and behold, it was Gus. And he was one of my students, I could say. Now, I don't remember what the lesson was about or anything. He says he still remembers it. So he has a much better memory than I do.
You don't remember it? I'm right.
I can't dispute it. Boy, are you lucky. He came to our home to visit us. Total stranger. He walked into our house and he says, Jake, which is your favorite chair? And I said, that one right there. He says, that's the one I'm sitting in.
Oh, well, you know, we did a lot of traveling, and sometimes the roads were good and sometimes they were not so good. Jake is quite partial to GM and Chevy, you know that. So whenever he had a van that he didn't like that much, it happened to be a Dodge. And then I had the privilege of driving it. We're coming back from Steinbach or somewhere, and Jake was tired, you know, he always worked too late and got up, well, whatever, I don't know what time he got up.
Never mind.
No, anyway, so he lay down in the back seat with all the equipment. And we may have chosen the wrong road. I was driving, so it was my fault. Anyway, there was some construction and we hit a bump. And Jake would fly right against the ceiling and came back down. Well, he said, good thing it's only a Dodge.
Never been the same since.
Someday the stammering tongue will falter no more, and the cracker sweeter song I shall sing. For I'll join the ransom choir on heaven's bright shore, forever to praise the King. And while the I'll keep on praising Him, and my voice will never tire or grow old. And my song shall ever be, praise the Lamb who died for me, and I'll sing it while ages shall roll. When a million years have passed in that wonderful place, my song of praise will just have begun. For my joy will never end while I look on His face, and my song will never be done. And while the ages roll, I'll keep on praising Him, and my voice will never tire or grow old. And my song shall ever be, praise the Lamb who died for me, and I'll sing it while ages shall roll. And I'll sing it while ages shall roll.
Okay, we have one more song. We'd like to close with Loving God, Loving Each Other.
my friends, loving God, loving each other, and the story never ends. We pushed back from the table to listen to his words, his secret plan before he had to go. It's not complicated, don't need a lot of rules. This is all you need to know. Loving God, loving each other, making music with my friends, loving God, loving each other, and the story never ends. We tend to make it harder, build steeples out of stone, fill books with explanations of the way. But if we stop and listen and break a little bread, we would hear the Master say, loving God, loving each other, making music with my friends, loving God, loving each other, and the story never ends. Loving God, loving each other, making music with my friends, loving God, loving each other, and the story never ends, and the story never ends. No, the story never ends.
Thank you.
We got to hear it one more time for Bethel Quartet, guys. Thanks so much for the ministry you've had all these years and for coming out of retirement one more time to celebrate this 50th with us. We still have, this is sort of your last chance to do some sharing, so if anyone would like to do some sharing, this would be your time.
As maybe most of you know, I am Judy Wall. And I was here at the very beginning of this church as well. We didn't attend right away, but shortly after it was built and started, I became a part of it. But my reason for coming to share a couple of things. First of all, a big memory when the quartet was up here, how Rodney would come up sometimes and he'd get so excited with Jake Jansen or one of the guys, and he would just hug him and he got so excited about their music. And that just brought a memory to me when you guys are singing here again. And how we missed Rodney, many, many times. Another thing, you also were a church that supported me and loved me and made it a way possible for me to be a missionary out to St. Louis, Missouri to work among the black people. You supported me, that was my total support there. I made $100 a month for the first 5 years I was there. And if it wasn't for you as a church, I wouldn't have been able to do that. But that $100, I made it, and God always provide extra. And the great letters I got from some of you people, and a couple of them that I remember was Otto Hams and John Zacharias. And I know many of you wrote me letters, but it's interesting that those two letters, I remember them, that you wrote me. And so I just thank you again for, like I say, when I reflect back, how grateful I am for this church. And it was my basis too for my spiritual growth. I think of Bob Elias too. He was in the Bible study group I was in. And they studied a book called, I forget the name of it, but I think it was by Rosalind Rinker or something like that, about sentence prayers, this book about prayers, praying that everybody could pray. They didn't need to say a whole bunch of sentences. You could pray in short little sentences. And that impacted me and really impacted my prayer life. I'm so grateful we studied that book. And there was something else I was going to share, but maybe that's not important. But one thing I do want to say, I want to thank you as a church to this day for taking care of my mother. None of her children come here to church anymore, and you have been good to her. And I just really thank you for caring for my mom. So may the Lord bless you and continue to work among you.
Okay. There we go. Not taking any chances here. A great blessing that has changed my life forever is to be able to preach after the Bethel Quartet has sung. I will resist the urge to do that this evening, much to your relief. Though I do have to say, gentlemen, that you haven't made it easy. It would be pretty easy to burst forth in a sermon just at this moment. I remember, though, and will never forget, the last time I preached after you sung. It was immediately after the song, Wings of the Morning with License to Fly. There was actually only one time that I can remember at Bethel Church that I found challenging or difficult. It was leaving. The 12 years here had enriched my life in every imaginable way. This church brought me to my career. I was determined and resolved that I was going to be an engineer. That was always settled in my mind. Until John Zacharias and Isaac Mueller and Peter Suderman and Abe Bandman. Was there someone else in that ministerial when I came here? I think that was them. Molded me into something more of what my mother always wanted me to be, and my father. And it was here that we were married. A number of memories with that event. Some of you keep insisting that I was late for my wedding. I keep insisting I was not because nothing had begun when I got here. And the end result, I thought, was extremely satisfactory. Has been for over 40 years since that time. It was here that I was ordained as a minister in the General Conference of Canada with Reverend Ernest Wiebe, an event that was very important to me and has remained so until this very day. And it was here that a great deal of my life was shaped spiritually in very profound ways, but perhaps never more than the time when we left, because I remember after what seemed like about 3 months of saying goodbye, and I'm sure it was pretty much all of that, as we drove away through North Dakota, having left the Wheelers for the last visit that we would have as pastor, I thought to myself, you know, there'll be some of these folk that we won't meet again in this life. It was a passing thought in tiredness. We drove a couple of days and got to Blind River, Ontario. I had just parked the car. Esther had gone in to see her sister and came dashing down the steps with this tragic news. It was unbelievable. I couldn't get my mind around that. I had spent 12 years trying to learn what it means to trust God and help others of us know what it means to trust God, and this was the kind of event for which no one can prepare. But we made the journey on to Toronto, and I flew back, and I conducted the last official event, I suppose, as pastor of Bethel Church, which was a profound experience, a very profound experience of faith. And I want to leave with you this evening words that stuck with me from that time, from a brother who was a dear friend. He had an awful lot to do with me being persuaded that I should stay here after that first 3 months of being summer pastor here. Mr. H.W. Elias said to me, events like this either make you bitter or they make you better. And he was pretty effective in showing that events like that can make one better. And there were many, many good years with him and the Elias family after all of that. So to come back here for this event this weekend was, for me, a necessity. It couldn't possibly be otherwise. And I bring you this evening greetings not only from myself, but from Pastor Wes Dobson. Maybe you remember the man. He is very, very sorry that he cannot be here this evening. He has had, as most of you know, a very long pastoral career since this time, and most recently is dean at Nipawin Bible Institute, where again he had an enormous influence in helping young people. He's sent me a couple of notes as this event has come up to express his regrets that he's not able to be here, and wants me to remind all of you of a couple of things. One, he hopes that you remember a little Irish from the days when he was here, because you'll recall we had to learn that language. I still remember that there was a few raised eyebrows when Wes stood more or less where I am now, called the ushers forward and asked them to lift the morning offering, which may have made some people wonder how much they should be putting in the offering plate, I suppose, for a little while there. But we managed to understand this man just talks another language. However, he learned a little bit of Low German. And I also learned a little bit of Low German, but I think only 4 words that we each remember that are really very important. Daut bleib ich nicht. And I would advise you to take those words very seriously with quite a bit of the reminiscing that's going on here this evening. Now, I wouldn't say that there's nothing in these things that's true. And I want to concur with Brother Zacharias that indeed there was an event where Bob Elias and Gary Spence and myself went to his house, and I'm not so sure about the midnight part, but it was pretty dark. And I can believe that also was not all that quiet. But I have this caveat. Bob Elias and Gary Spence could lead the angel Gabriel into sin. So it's no wonder if maybe I slipped a little that night. So just keep all these things in mind as you hear all of the events that have been going on. And Gary Spence, you know that you can't count the number of times you got me into trouble. And it was always your fault. Just so you know. This time, Dot glaube ich nicht doesn't apply.
Thank you, Gus and Judy. Any other sharing this evening? Come on in.
Well, I don't know if I should say anything. I'm a 52-year MCer, EMMCer, but I didn't see anywhere where I couldn't say something here tonight, too. I had a big privilege today to hear Mr. Jake Johnson say he finally got old. Using dual headlights and all that stuff, you remember? Everybody heard it, didn't you? I was a young lad, about 18 years old, and trucking was the name of the game. And I could haul a little bit of fuel for Jake Johnson, and was privileged to have a meal there too for dinner, and went back to the shop, and I says, "Man, Jake, you're getting old." He's a lifelong friend of the family, but "You're getting old." "No," he says, "I'm not." I said, "What is it then?" "I'm young." Could be my dad. No, I'm not just not old. That's all there is to it. So I guess I just was younger. Many years after that, when I had a son running beside me who was 20 years old, I found him again, and I said, "Jake, are you getting old already?" "Not yet," he said. "It's getting there, but I'm young." Well, I had to believe him again. Today he stood here and said he was getting old. Praise the Lord. Have one for Gus Conkle too. I bet he doesn't even know my name, but we had coffee at his house in Pennsylvania when he was going to be, he was studying theology. I don't know if he remembers that. My brother and I went down to Pennsylvania. Bernie was in Pennsylvania. And from there we went over to the Conkles and had coffee. That was a big thing for me. And the other thing, I guess, was I had a row with the wife yesterday already. Today it was all over, but she wanted to, this weekend is the Gospel Festival in Winkler, and everybody should be there. But I says, this is home for me. A homecoming is a homecoming, and that only comes once. And it's 50 years, and here we are. I really enjoy homecomings. And she just said we will share she'll go to the Gospel Festival, and I'll go here. So this is where it's going to be. And blessings for all the good stuff that happened here. I know most, when I'm in this church, I feel more at home than in our church, because here's where the people are that I grew up with. Cousins and guys like Abe Wheeler, married 3 weeks before I did. His wife was an organist. I feel good here. And thank you for the rest of it.
Mark? I'm of the younger persuasion, so my memories are fresher. When I saw those pictures, I'm not that old yet, but some of them had me in there. And just some quick stories here. Gary Suderman, all I remember is canoe trips. Colin Entz, my big cousin, Mr. Tough Guy. We got to Bergthaler Falls, where you're supposed to dock your canoes and go on your canoe trip, and it was raining. So Dennis and Gary, who were in charge, he says, you know what, guys, let's just hunker down here. We're going to play it cool. We'll go on a day trip tomorrow. Everything's going to be good. Okay, that's fine. The ranger comes by and says, guys, there's bears, okay? Make sure you lock everything up, keep everything in the trees or in vehicles, be safe. Yep, no problem. Well, I grew up with my cousin right next door, and he was always a tough guy. And so we're sleeping in the tent, and I scratched the side of the tent. And Colin says, what's that? And I was usually the one running away from him. So I'm like, he's asking me, I'm going to lie. I said, it's a bear. And he was out of the tent, and he slept in the bus. Okay? So then I stayed in the tent, we all slept in the tent, but we woke up in the morning, and what did we find? Claw marks in our water bag. So at some point in time, there had been a bear, so he ended up getting the last laugh anyway, and I still ran away from him. So, from Ron Zacharias, our youth pastor way back when, setting up go-kart tracks in the back here. He didn't even know how to drive a go-kart, but we taught him how to weld and whatever. We built go-karts. Puppetry team. We had a puppetry team for a bunch of years. And I happened to be the only male on that team. And it's been mentioned here before where Bethel has seemed to be a little bit progressive. We did a lot of crazy stuff. And with Ron Zacharias, there was nothing short of crazy. We got asked to do a full evening for a youth outside of town. I'm not going to say where. A full evening. It was a full youth event. Supper. We were supposed to lead worship, and then we were supposed to end with a big puppetry finale. So we're having supper there, and we haul in all our equipment, and the youth pastor there saw that we were carrying in drums. And so we were all sitting on the table eating pizza, and this youth pastor comes and says, you know, you can't play those here. He says, what do you mean? Well, long story short, we ended up doing it anyway. So me being the youth, I was feeling a little bit uncomfortable. You know, this is a situation I didn't want to be in. So we all go upstairs after the worship. It all worked out well. So our puppetry stage was amazing. We even had a drummer puppet, okay? And there was a flash pot, like pyrotechnics, whoosh, big flames shooting up, and it was really, really cool. That was my job. My job was to load that thing, wire it up, and at the right time, fire this thing off. So after all of this kerfuffle with the drums in the basement, we're sitting upstairs, the puppetry's going on, all the kids are loving it. It's time for me to flip the switch. Poof. All the lights went out. The whole church was dead. The janitor was there. He couldn't figure out where the breakers were. Everything was dead. There was no lights. There was nothing. All Ron Zacharias said was, guys, we're packing up. He was a bit of a perfectionist. He liked things to work well and whatever. Like it has been mentioned here all evening, Bethel it's the wrong word, but it's synonymous with crazy. Fun, loving, caring. There's been many families.
including ours, that have been loved and cared for. And as many of you have shared, as a younger person, we just hope we can continue and be faithful to what all of you have been part of. All of you have been a part of all our lives. And we just hope and pray, and we thank you. As a younger generation, I thank you. I had so many conversations with Mr. Buhler about youth and ministry. And he was so instrumental, and Tony getting me involved in church life. And that's Bethel. Involvement, love, and caring.
Thanks, Mark. Our guest speaker for this evening is Ray Wheeler. Ray is deeply involved in Children's Camps International, as many of you know. Before that, Winkler Bible Camp and being host parents for young offenders was part of their lives. And he talks about Bethel as being roots of his spiritual journey. So let's welcome Ray.
Thanks, Gerald. Overseas, I'm always told, like North America, I'm always told when I'm sharing somewhere, make sure you don't go too long. When you get overseas in the developing world, the first thing they tell you is make sure your sermon is not too short. But what I've heard already this evening, I will keep it short because you guys are blessed beyond belief. And I think at the beginning we weren't quite sure how many people were going to share this evening, but it's good to hear your hearts and hear what God has done here in your midst. It's played a big part of my life, this church here. It's often until you actually reflect back, you don't realize what kind of impact it really has had on your life. Now, if I had more time, I would talk about all kinds of interesting things about what has been shared already, but I'll focus on more so about this church, its impact on my life, and what I see God has done through me, in spite of me, and what plan He had for my life. I do recall coming to know Jesus Christ in 1978, and that next morning I came to Bethel Church and I came to Gus Conkle's office, and I wanted to let somebody know the exciting news. And my commitment to Christ at that time was conditional. I said, God, I don't want to go through the motions. It's either all in or not at all. I said, I want an exciting ride, fully sold out to Jesus Christ. That's been tested many times. I didn't want a boring Christian life going through the motions Sunday morning, then do the rest of life. I wanted to be on fire for Him. But there's many times I've had to say, Lord, please slow it down. I can't handle it. It's over and above what I ever imagined it could be. Whatever I imagined it could be. After that, about a year later, I did attend Winkler Bible Institute for 1 year, had Neil Funk for an instructor, and he was teaching Christian Home, and I was so distracted chasing a young lady that I wasn't paying attention to the course. And Dorothy, who I later on married, and Neil Funk, a pastor, was so gracious as to give me an incomplete instead of a failing pass. He said, you can actually complete that when you actually do Christian Home. And so someday I'd like to introduce Neil to my family, children, happily married, love the Lord, serving the Lord, and now 2 grandchildren. Just absolutely precious. So I assume I would get a passing mark in that course. But after the baptism, then I got baptized in 1979, and it was just another turning point in my life because I planted the flag, I am a follower of Jesus Christ. and Gus baptized me that year. But more so than that was in store for us, because I also remember one Sunday morning in the church, because I had felt so strongly that God was calling us to work with young offenders, move out to Alberta. We'd been married just for 1 year, to be house parents for young offenders at that time in Alberta, being 16 to 20 years old. Dorothy was 20 and I was 24. And we're going to be house parents for 6 young guys, and she was, needless to say, somewhat terrified. But there was a Sunday morning service here, and I believe Gus was speaking, and had to do with surrender. I remember driving back on Highway 32, or the Highway 201, going back up to the hill where we lived, and she broke down and cried, and she said, I will give it all. Scared, but I will give it to Jesus. Dorothy, 34 years, been married this July 11th of this year. She has been my prayer warrior. God's gift. Dorothy means gift from God. She's been a gift to me. Gus Conkle did the wedding for us. Yeah, praise the Lord. And I know for a fact that had God not brought this incredible pillar of strength and prayer warrior to undergird me, to support me, to work alongside in all the things we've been doing, to be there, there's no way it would have happened. And I just praise and thank God that He's brought her as a loving, supportive spouse, because it has been a very crazy ride. There's times when we were in Alberta with young offenders, and I could go into many of those stories. It was at times very overwhelming and frightening, and yet God was faithful. It was a time of character development and preparation for future ministry, and I do understand and realize that often God cannot trust us with doing bigger things until He's chipped away and refined us through the fire, and He builds a character so that you end up not taking the credit, the glory for yourself, but that you give it to Him. And I know I've been through the desert several times learning incredibly hard lessons, because I'm a slow learner. But once you've learned the lessons through the fire, those lessons are not easily forgotten, because occasionally God throws something at you again just to remind you, you cannot do this without me. It is me and me alone, but if you surrender and submit yourself to me, I will do it through you if you want me to. And so that choice is there every single day, my way or His. And it's an opportunity we have to surrender. We've seen God do absolutely incredible things. One of the verses I'd like to share in the book of Habakkuk, I share it quite often when I share in churches. And the verse in chapter 3 says, Lord, we have heard of your fame. We stand in awe of your deeds. And then the prophet says, do them again in our time. And so my prayer is that God does something so incredibly awesome that He and He alone can get the glory that we cannot. The bigger it is, the more incredible it is, the more clear it is that He has done it. That we cannot do that without Him. On a trip to India, we had a young lady come with us, incredible voice, a powerful voice. And she was singing in one of the churches, a church of about 5,000 people under a thatched roof. And in India, they have sound systems. They blare them right to the absolute top so that your whole chest is shaking and your pant legs are vibrating. It's crazy. They're like volume. And so this young lady is in this church and she's singing beautiful song. The people there didn't know English, but they were just enthralled, mesmerized with the singing, and they're just really into it. And all of a sudden, as this happens in India, power's cut. Boom! Silence. She's still singing. But who could hear her? We're right behind her. We can barely hear her. What I'm trying to get is that we, in our own strength, can do only such a little bit, but with the power of the Holy Spirit, the power unleashed can do things way more than we could ever ask or imagine. And when I think of a congregation here sitting here for 50 years, faithfully, obediently, having struggles and challenges like we always will, the enemy's always trying to get and undermine what we want to do, always attacking us, trying to divide us. But as you continue to submit and surrender to Him and focus on, carry on 50 years of faithfulness and obedience, absolutely incredible. Bless you guys. And do not give up. Keep on trucking. Keep on moving. God can do more in an instant than you can in a lifetime, but He wants to work in and through you, and it's never done. I love hearing you guys sing. Tremendous memories, and here they were again. Never give up. It's just so incredible what God's done through your ministry, so many things behind the scenes we don't know of. And in this church, I'll tell you, there's so very, very many stories. And maybe you don't know many of those stories, but occasionally you get glimpses of that. 4 years ago, I was in a hospital bed, and they did diagnose me with cancer. Later on, they found out there was no cancer. But I did hear, not only this church, but numbers of churches in this community, they were praying for me. And when the news came back from the pathologist that there was no cancer, I was celebrating, rejoicing, knowing that God had answered prayers here in this congregation and other ones and overseas. We know that God has a purpose and a plan for each one of us. We are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, to do good works, which He's prepared in advance for us to do. He has stuff for you to do each and every day. And it looks different for all of us. And God's not going to judge us according to how big or what you've done. He's going to judge us according to what He's asked you to do and how obedient and faithful you've been to do that. Not to do what the other guy's supposed to do. You guys, some of you were at the harvest that we did here with a couple 100 combines. The principle and the symbolism was so clear. We gave each one row to do. Park your combine here, and when it's time to go, get her done. Don't look at the other guy. Don't care what color his combine is. Do your assignment. Your role. That's what God's asking you to do in life. You don't need to worry about the other ones. You don't need to smite at them because they may not be exactly the same as you or the same. But if they're combining, they're harvesting, they're on our team. Let's celebrate, let's rejoice, let's cheer each other on, and let's get it done. This world, literally, if you follow the news today, you've got to say this world is getting pretty close to the point of insanity. What's happening south of the border, the Middle East, out in Europe or East Asia, there's craziness happening. And I heard a pastor saying that we are just a very, very short distance away from major persecution coming in North America. And I believe it's true when you read the news. There's lots of stuff going on. But we do not cringe and shake in fear because we serve a living God. And He will be with us every step of the way. And yes, through those tough times, He will refine. He will shape and mold us so that we will reflect to a greater extent the character of Jesus Christ. He will do that as we submit and surrender to Him. I've been so blessed that, yes, my spiritual roots and spiritual journey started here at Bethel. And it was now only when I reflected back, I realized how significant it was. And I know that God could have and possibly would have used others, but here is where it was, where I came to know Jesus and was loved by the people here, got baptized, married by Pastor Gus, and then on, knowing that those foundations have been set. And I do know that this one church is built on a solid foundation. Keep on keeping on. The verse, there's so much more I could share. Just a couple of things. God is truly an amazing God, and often He takes our weaknesses and it becomes could potentially be His strength, because then He does it through you. After 11 years of work with young offenders and dealing with some incredible spiritual battles with kids who had some serious problem, seeing God do some incredible work in their lives, seeing a number of them make commitments to Christ. And then after 11 years of that, we felt now we can just settle in and just start farming. It would be so much fun. We're looking forward. It's in the DNA, in the blood. And I wanted to get back to farming. And then we had somebody approach us about being the camp director at Winkler Bible Camp. And I laughed because there's not a chance in the world that could ever happen. We dreamt about possibly I could be a maintenance man and Dorothy could be the cook at camp. We could raise our kids at camp. It would be fantastic. But we had a problem because I couldn't fix anything. And a maintenance man who can't fix stuff ain't going to work. But they weren't asking me to be the maintenance man. They asked me to be the camp director, and I had no clue. I was scared spitless, and so he said, no, absolutely not. He came back again, and 3 times it happened. Finally, he said, Lord, well, whatever, we may try it. But there was a hidden reason why I didn't say yes to that, being the camp director. Because I knew the camp director had to go speak in front of people all the time. And I had a phobia, speaking in public. I couldn't do it. I just argued and discussed that with God over and over again. And finally said, let me try it. I know how to do it. And so I surrendered that to God. God used that, worked through that, and to some extent is touching lives. As I remember that lesson, without him I can do nothing, but with him all things are possible. All things are possible. So God took us to Wake Bible Camp. You know the story there. 10 years we saw God because of the response in the community, supporting that cause. The camp grew unbelievable. It was just one of the most rewarding times of our lives, being there and working with the lives of young people. Realize that we now have been called to train young people, that we would like them to teach the kids the good news of Jesus Christ, to role model Christ, and then hopefully they can reach out to the parents that didn't know Jesus. Young man comes from India. All of a sudden, a new window of time opens up, and we saw that God had a purpose and a plan. Took us overseas to India. Now it's in 8 different countries. We train over 100,000 young people, camp counselors, Bible lesson study leaders, prayer cell leaders, and 1.4 million kids have heard about Jesus Christ. We serve an awesome God. We don't know what he has around the next corner, but we can with full confidence take that journey. After 50 years of faithfully, I see new growth. I see new things. And it's just encouraging, exciting. And I heard again that the congregation in Sunday mornings is pretty well full. And maybe we didn't build it big enough. But I'll tell you, it's exciting when you see a country, a rural church that is thriving, that is excited, that is passionate, that's on fire. In spite of what's going on around us, faithfulness and obedience for the next, hopefully, 50 years until he comes back. My prayer is that he would bless you and that he would keep you. In Isaiah 41, verse 10, do not fear, God says, for I am with you, and do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, and I will help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God will bring to completion the work that he started. And as you start thinking and you get experiences where you start thinking more about that side of heaven, or the other side instead of this side, because this side is temporary. And yes, I do, you know, my spiritual life is about 37 years, but tomorrow I'm turning 58. And so I start thinking too, I got friends and I've got a lot of people that I've come to know, they're already moved on or are in tough shape. They've been through stuff. And once you start looking at that and reflecting on that, further faster, the more people can hear about Jesus Christ, the more God wants to work in and through us. So right here in this community, my prayer is that God will bless you so that you can be a blessing to others over here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that challenge, Ray. Worship team, want to come up and close the evening for us? Thanks.
The next song we're going to sing is Great is Thy Faithfulness. And I was sitting there and thinking, you know, well, you should say something. Great is Thy Faithfulness is a very special song, right, Gus? And I remembered singing it many, many times in Bible school. And I was reminded as different people shared, and I thought, I need to say something, and I didn't want to get emotional, but I am also very thankful for my spiritual roots here, and I'm thankful for Gus in a special way, for how he was always there. And then I thank Esther for taking that time, giving up Gus. Thanks, Gus, for all the times that you were there for our family and for me. Anyhow, let's stand and sing Great is Thy Faithfulness.
Shadow of turning with thee.
we're not even old. just don't got something.
Can we show our appreciation for that worship team, please? Please be seated. Thanks so much for the great memories, great sharing. Gathering as a church body to laugh together, cry together, support each other is biblical, and it's humbling to see how the Lord has blessed Bethel over all these years. I'll just close with a few announcements and a prayer, and then we'll. I know the plan was to have some sharing and a bonfire later as well. I know there was some rain this evening, so I'm not sure how that's going to go, but feel free to mingle here and take a walk to the back to see. We have a tent there and see if people are gathering there as well. Tomorrow morning is a worship service here at 10 a.m. Usually it's 10:30, so note the half hour early at 10 o'clock. If you're interested in being part of a choir here, that practice is starting at 8:45. 8:45 tomorrow morning with a 10 o'clock service. There's a free lunch. Everyone is welcome for that. And there will be games and sort of our annual picnic amalgamation in the afternoon as well. So feel everyone is welcome to stay for that, games and fellowship, with a 4 o'clock Rollkuchen and watermelon meal at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So pray that, hope that you can all come for that. Let's close with a word of prayer. Father, thanks so much for being with Bethel Church for 50 years. We thank you for all the memories that people have shared, some from the very beginning, some much more recent, some hurtful, some positive, some funny. And we just pray that through all of those, through this life journey, that you've just been with us as a congregation. And we trust that you will continue to be with us, and that we, as a congregation, are on guard against our enemy, and that we stay steadfast to you and your word. We thank you for just the challenge that Ray had for us, and we pray that we will take that to heart as well. And just pray that you'll be with us the rest of this weekend as we continue to share and fellowship and laugh together, and maybe even do some crying together as well. We just thank you for this blessing. We pray this and thank this in your precious name. Amen. Thanks so much for coming this evening.